No one told us, but the lore is actually hidden in the children's menu. It's in that dot to dot. It will reveal the secret code that unlocks the lore of the Rainforest Cafe.
This is gonna be a video, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gonna be a video.
This is gonna be a wacky video. This is Food Theory in the jungle.
Coming to you live from the jungle. Internet, welcome to Food Theory, where today our episode is getting wild. Make no mojo bones about it. Friends, if you follow our sister channels, you know that I have a bit of a history with animatronic-themed pizza restaurants. So today I thought I'd expand our horizons a bit and talk about an animatronic-themed jungle restaurant. I'm talking about the Rainforest Cafe, North America's most well-known dining chain to feature childhood-scarring thunderstorms every 20 minutes. It's all pretend, but it's all just lights and sound. Ah, yes. The only restaurant that requires a parental disclaimer to avoid traumatizing your kid. In case you missed it, or in case you thought that this was just something that they made up for the climax of Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Hey you, Scuba Doobie Doo.
The Rainforest Cafe is a chain of family restaurants with a wacky neon tropical jungle theme, a giant fish tank, and more animatronic creatures than you could shake a mozzarella stick at. But what's recently put this franchise back into the public consciousness is this man, Eddie Burback. If your watch history is anything like mine, over the last month you may have seen this video being shoved hard into every slot of the old suggested video feed.
Is this guy actually gonna go to every Rainforest Cafe in the country? That title is a lie. I'm going to every Rainforest Cafe in the country. And Canada!
And that's exactly what he does. 36 minutes of road tripping around the US
and Canada!
With his friend and fellow YouTuber Ted Nivison to experience the minor quality differences between 18 different locations of this franchise, from the one with a volcano down in Florida to the one with a dark ride in Galveston, Texas. If you haven't been beaten into submission by the algorithm to click on any of these videos yet, do it. One, it'll get YouTube off your back, but two, both guys just make great videos. I've actually been watching Eddie for a while now, but this video introduced me to Ted. Both of their channels are hilarious, so find your new favorite creator today and dull the pain of existence with a few hours of watching someone buy tickets to Morbius over and over and over. Anyway, I was so inspired by their heroic trip that I made one for myself. To continue their glorious mission of eating at every Rainforest Cafe, I decided to check one off the list that they didn't hit. The only Rainforest Cafe in all of Europe and one of only 6 international locations, Rainforest Cafe Paris. Disneyland Paris, to be specific. So our options are Rainforest Cafe or Billy Bob's Tex-Mex, because nothing says Disneyland Paris like Billy Bob's Tex-Mex. In honor of Eddie, Rainforest Cafe Paris. I've been inspired. Also, let me be clear, it's not like I flew over there just for the Rainforest Cafe or anything. I was already in the neighborhood on another trip and it just made sense. Also, it'd been a hard morning. Parent stuff, trust me, it's not interesting, so we just decided to lean on in. This is where we fall into today. This is the peak of our morning at Disneyland Paris.
In the jungle.
And you know what? It was good, actually. They have fish in the tank. That's how you know it's a good Rainforest Cafe. The monkeys were in the bathrooms. The animatronics were going at full force.
Matthew met Dumbo at the Rainforest Cafe.
He doesn't fly.
No, he's hanging out here now. He moonlights at the rainforest.
I mean, he was a child actor. The non-alcoholic beverages were there. Even our server, Haruna, went in hard from moment one, growling at us to ensure that we were having ourselves a wild time. And you know what? I did have a wild time. In fact, I had such a wild time, I decided to get a souvenir to commemorate the occasion. I'm gonna buy some underwear from the Rainforest Cafe. Just know, the next time you see me, then I immediately regretted the decision as soon as I got the bill. It was either pay rent for the month or go to Rainforest Cafe, which is why this video exists. Gotta write that meal off as a business expense, baby! Oh yeah, and later this year I'm slated to travel to Dubai for a consulting thing, so considering that that's one of the final international locations, looks like I may have just found myself some dinner plans while I'm over there. So today, embark with me on a journey through the world of themed restaurants, because where there's a theme, there's lore!
Do you want to go around and like peek into people's tables and like like rustle through the bushes a little bit looking for lore.
Yeah, I think
you'd be like, don't worry, I'm a YouTuber.
Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't know that these guys were more than just a random collection of jungle animals? That you were, in fact, looking at none other than Ozzy the orangutan, Rio the macaw, Nile the crocodile, Tuki the elephant, Bamba the gorilla, Iggy the iguana, Maya the jaguar, and Cha-Cha the red-eyed tree frog, aka the Wild Bunch? A carefully selected, diverse team of the tropical canopy's best and brightest? A literal Avengers of the rainforest with their own names, backstories, hopes, dreams, ambitions? Well, names, at least, and that's about it. Okay, so the lore pool here is a bit shallow, but the history of this place isn't. So today, I aim to find out why no one has done a Five Nights in the Forest game. Why is Chuck E. Cheese mutated into a darkly ironic jump scare game while Ozzy and Tuki are just waiting for their turn to shine? Could the resurgence brought about by Eddie and Ted be enough to prevent this franchise from going extinct? When you really break it down, the Rainforest Cafe came about from the bizarre fusion of two different pop culture trends, returning veterans from World War II and the 1970s rise of ecology chic. You see, theme restaurants like Rainforest Cafe, Chuck E. Cheese, Planet Hollywood, and Johnny Rockets were huge in the economically booming 1990s, especially in the suburban world of shopping malls. And when I tell you that there was a theme restaurant for everything, I do mean there was a theme restaurant for everything. There was one that was called Bugaboo Creek, where the theme was Canada. Just Canada. And let's not forget the restaurant Twin Peaks, where one look at the decor will tell you that the theme was not a classic David Lynch mystery series. But to understand why this was such a trend in the 90s, it's actually helpful to look at the beta version of the concept from the previous boom period in the 50s, specifically the post-World War II baby boom, aka the origin of the phrase boomers. By the 1950s, families with booming broods were entering a thriving post-war economy, an economy that actively encouraged America's expanding middle class to buy cars, move to the sprawling suburbs, and keep that economy chugging along by buying more stuff. And the most popular stuff to buy? Well, anything that seemed fancy or exotic, but now was fortunately within your price bracket. See, the boomers' parents had not only just finished surviving a Second World War, many of them had also lived through the Great Depression, facing abject poverty, hunger, and struggle. Suddenly, being able to buy your own house and paint it whatever color you wanted, put whatever furniture you wanted in, use as many patterns as you wanted, that was a huge luxury. I mean, it certainly is that today too, but I'm just saying it hadn't been available like that in anyone's lifetime. It's easy to look back on all these classic, here's what the 50s looked like, button color decorating photos and cringe at how tacky everything was, but remember, this was kind of like the birth of retail therapy for a generation that had basically lived through the apocalypse, and food was obviously a huge part of all that. Why are old cookbooks full of unholy jello desserts and dinners where bananas and pineapples get Frankenstein together? Because gelatin and tropical fruit that was available out of season were items that used to represent things only rich people could have. Mostly because up until that point, it was. The process of rendering collagen from animal bones took a lot of time and skill. As the story goes, when Marie Antoinette was caught fleeing Paris, she was eating carrots aspic in her carriage. But now, fast forward to the 50s, and suddenly that's available to the everyman. Powdered gelatin was everywhere, so were refrigerators. This jello ring around the tuna garnished with radish roses may look disgusting to you, probably tasted disgusting too, but in 1962, this was somebody's equivalent of eating chicken wings that were battered in liquid gold. It said, in one dish, I didn't just survive, I thrived. Into this cultural mix came Ernest Raymond Gant, an American businessman and World War II vet who introduced the world to his iconic restaurant, Don the Beachcomber, which we know today as a tiki bar, where the walls were covered in bamboo, Polynesian masks, and driftwood, and they were serving fruity drinks with tropical sounding names. It was kitschy, it was far from authentic, and it was a smash hit, especially for World War II veterans who were nostalgic for their time abroad in the Pacific, as well as American diners who were looking for something a little exotic. Almost immediately, there were hundreds of copycats across the country, and suddenly the world had itself the first ever theme restaurant. And as you can probably guess, even if you've never been to a tiki bar for yourself, the Rainforest Cafe is very much the more family-friendly descendant of this concept. The same way that 1950s moms and dads filled their homes with quote-unquote tacky furniture, chowed down on fruity jello, and trekked out to silly bars packed with tiki torches, 1990s families ventured into the Rainforest Cafe to munch on safari fries and take photos with Cha-Cha because they could. Because it felt like an indulgence. It was the replacement for a trip to the jungle or a trip to Disneyland. All of it without being too indulgent. We have to take out a second mortgage on our house. Alright, to be fair, the second helping of Rasta pasta was a bit on the indulgent side. The other half of this story begins in the 1970s with the rise of the environmental movement. The late 50s and 60s constantly had environmental hazards in the headlines. Massive oil spills in Santa Barbara, nuclear testing at Bikini Atoll, radioactive fallout off the coast of Japan, rivers catching fire near my hometown in Ohio. Booyah, baby, that is Cleveland pride right there. there. It takes a special city to be able to set the water on fire. People were starting to have enough, and all this ecological devastation was contrasted with the first color photographs of the Earth taken from astronauts in space. The iconic blue marble photograph comes from this generation. Humanity realized en masse for the first time that the Earth was beautiful. It needed protecting. This was just a bit of what gave rise to the modern incarnation of Earth Day as we know it. Ecology chic suddenly became all the rage in 1970s family entertainment, from Sesame Street to Woodsy the Owl and Smokey the Bear.
You can let some people know. Give a hoot, don't pollute. Never be a dirty bird.
And while it certainly waned a bit in the 80s, it came roaring back in the 90s. Heck, even G.I. Joe was taking time off to fight pollution.
To pollute the environment, Cobra unleashes the septic tank and evil eco-warriors. And when hit, they change color to reveal battle damage.
Yep, that right there is what I always wanted. Forget the karate chops, give me those figures with the awesome corrosion action. All of it was right in time for Rainforest Cafe to swoop in and mainline the general save the rainforest vibe. Nothing says I'm doing my part for the environment quite like ordering a hefty plate of beef lava nachos. And with that context, it starts to make a lot of sense why everyone basically agrees that Chuck E. Cheese is retroactively creepy, while Rainforest Cafe, which has an entire Jumanji's worth of predatory animals, hasn't spawned a single nightmare. The animatronics of Cha-Cha and the rest of the Wild Bunch are almost always realistic animals. In fact, in the original vision for the restaurant, there were supposed to be actual live parrots and other small live exhibits in pens, which kind of seems like a health hazard, but hey, who am I to judge? The reason Chuck E. Cheese morphs into FNAF so easily is that Pascali, Mr. Munch, Charles Entertainment Cheese, all of them exist hard in that uncanny valley. And old arcades, they're just naturally sketchy. Ball pits that are basically petri dishes for the next global pandemic, sticky game buttons, aging animatronics that run on decades-old technology. It's like a carnival midway. If you didn't feel the need to take a shower afterwards, well, you probably didn't go to a good one. But the Rainforest Cafe, it's affordable escapism for the American middle class. It's a small sense of luxury packaged with the safety net of the familiar, all wrapped in a positive save the environment message. It's safe, bright, and colorful. It is chemically engineered to be as universally appealing as possible. Watching Eddie Burbach's Rainforest Cafe video, the one word that keeps popping up is fine.
It was fine. They were fine.
The food is fine. The service, fine. Trip is going fine. Most of the things that go wrong are out there on the road, not in the restaurant. You can tell early on that he's looking for something to rant about, something to really dig into, but it just isn't there. It's a largely pleasant experience. And shockingly, Eddie's far from the only person to feel this way. We as a theorist team looked at a lot of other Rainforest Cafe content when compiling this theory. Other videos, fan pages, older articles, and what stands out is that the same narrative that emerged in Eddie's video kept playing out whenever people talk about this place. Time and again, we read articles of people checking out Rainforest Cafe as this silly, tacky nostalgia thing from their youth and expecting it to be super cringe. But instead, they come away with a, huh, that was good? I mean, that was my experience. Hot take. Rainforest Cafe is good, actually. And in the comments on both Ed and Ted's videos, you see people actively wishing that they could do a similar trip. One article in particular just knocked me right back into my chair with this deep, sincere eulogy for the closing of the Rainforest Cafe near the author's childhood home. I'm just gonna read this segment because it's beautiful. Quote, as a kid, I demanded my family go to the rainforest for each birthday dinner. The trumpeting elephants, sparkling branches, and colorful live birds enchanted me. When I was just starting to question my sexuality, Rainforest Cafe was the beautiful chaos that I craved in the orderly, homogeneous suburbs. I'm no longer that insecure, naive kid, but I'm still protecting him. If a 10-year-old who feels overwhelmingly different in Grays Lake, Illinois doesn't have Rainforest Cafe, what do they have? And why do uninspired, oppressively bland restaurants like Ruby Tuesday get to stay open in malls across America while my campy, disorderly, and attention-seeking Rainforest Cafe closes? There's something to be said for a suburban environment that takes up too much space and, instead of apologizing for its presence, embraces the exuberance. At 12, I just wanted to get through my days undetected. Rainforest Cafe let me hide under its larger-than-life mushroom cap until I was ready to come out and fly with the colorful feathered birds. Wow. I mean, that's beautiful. It comes from the heart. And I think the article's author, Joseph Longo, is onto something. In a world where everything's trying to fit you into a box, force you to conform, a restaurant covered in vines where the elephant screams in your ear every 5 minutes, yeah, that's gonna stand out as something unabashedly abnormal. And I can relate to Joseph Longo's feelings here. I didn't have a Rainforest Cafe growing up, but I did have a Johnny Rockets. And being in a place where where the waiters would be forced to reluctantly dance to Love Shack at appropriate intervals. It made my musical theater-loving heart sing. I felt at home. Like Eddie, I went into that Rainforest Cafe expecting to meme it to death, and I walked out having had a fun time. Whereas Chuck E. Cheese never got out of the uncanny valley with its awkward theming, the Rainforest Cafe was a success because it committed to the bit. It wasn't ashamed of itself or what it was trying to be. That's an important mentality to remember in today's increasingly serious and ironic world, that sometimes something can just be stupid fun. And you know what? It's okay. It's okay to be charmed by something like this. It's okay to embrace the kitsch. And that is why the Rainforest Cafe continues to persist in the hearts, minds, and malls of America. It also helps that one burger costs the same amount as a liver transplant. That might also be helping keep them alive. But hey,